What's up? It's Matt back with another restaurant expert roundup. Today I'm with Chef Jensen Cummings. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And I love the at Jensen Cummings there. It's the first time I've seen somebody put their how to reach out to them there. So tell us who you are. We know who you are now, but tell us a little more in depth who you are, where you're from, your background, all that good stuff.
You got it. So I am a fifth consecutive generation chef restaurateur. My family has been in this game since 1900. We opened our first restaurant in Little Falls, Minnesota called La Fond House. I have only seen pictures. It looks like one of those saloons where Wyatt Earp would have shot somebody out front, one of those deals. And then out to California, grandfather had bars and restaurants in San Francisco. And then currently my three uncles own 7-8 restaurants between California, Iowa, Florida. My younger brother is in the game as well. He cooked for me for a lot of years. And I got in the industry in 2000. I graduated high school. I moved out to Ames, Iowa, from San Diego to Ames, Iowa. Big culture shock. But my uncles had 5 restaurants. Big change. Huge change. And my restaurant career started there, washing dishes, and found my people. I found my tribe. Absolutely. I loved the work hard, play hard. I loved, I lived with 4 other guys who worked in the restaurant, and it was just like the energy of it was intense and palpable. And so went from dishwasher to kind of running the line in like a year. I was just hungry, worked every shift I possibly could, and kind of parlayed that into a career in the industry, and then really have focused on media and hospitality strategy and consulting over the last years. Is kind of, burnout in the kitchen. You can only grind 70 hours a week for so long. And so now I'm thinking about the industry in a different way, maybe a little more perspective, trying to bring a little bit of holistic thinking influence into the industry. So that's me, man.
Well, that's awesome. So yeah, San Diego, that had to be a shock. That's one of my favorite cities. San Diego and Charlotte, North Carolina are 2 of my favorite cities.
Nice.
And San Diego to where you went, that's a big difference.
It was a big difference. It was interesting though. My uncle, Rick Carmer, who owns a couple restaurants there, shout out Wallabies Bar and Grill. It's like CNN's number 35 sports bar in the country. Been there since '88. Wow. Dublin Bay, a Irish pub restaurant that I actually helped open back in the day. He said, you're getting a lot of trouble out there, nephew, in California. I know you're graduating high school barely. Let's get you out of Southern California and get you out here to the Midwest, and we'll put you to work. And, it's a college town. You go chase college girls for a while. I said, sure, sounds fine for a summer. And I was there for 5 years, went to culinary school out there, opened multiple restaurants out there, and got myself, hooked in the industry.
So where are you located now? Where's home base now?
Denver. Out in Denver, been here 13 years. Amazing. I like the balance of it because there was when I got here a little bit of still small town feel to it, yet very kind of progressive as well. In the dining scene, I was able to kind of put a stamp on it a little bit. It wasn't New York, LA, Chicago that was so established, yet it also had a lot of upside potential. And so we chose this as kind of our spot, and opened up quite a few restaurants and did the progressive chef-owned thing for a while. Failed at that miserably multiple times, and you know the game.
Oh yeah. So tell us about the podcast, because that's how I found you. I've been following you for a while. Best Served Podcast. Tell us about the podcast and why you started it and kind of the mission of it.
Podcast was something that sounded so crazy to me. Like it was something that I had never considered doing. Yet I've always been out there, kind of a personality. And, speak with my hands a lot. I was like, I have that energy and that bravado to like get out there and speak on the topics within the industry that are important to me. And I've done that in multiple channels, yet I never thought that I was going to be the media side. I was always the talent, right? I was always the one that the media was coming to. And I said, Can I encompass all of that? Well, podcast gave me an opportunity where I said, I can still be in it and have the perspective to be able to influence it by speaking to people across the industry. And it was actually Gary Vee on an episode talking to Chase Jarvis, I believe, where he said, Anchor, no more excuses. You can do it from this. And I said, hell yes, I'm doing it from my phone. So I literally got the Zoom account going and the Anchor account going and a tiny little $30 headset and just started hopping on phone calls with friends. And this was November 18th, we launched. And, it's doing 2-3 episodes of straight audio, just however I could do it as fast as possible and talk to as many people as possible across the industry. And that was kind of like the speed at which we went. But then I had to figure out what the mission was, right? Yeah. It's like, just talk about restaurants. I was like, I don't know that that's important to me. And I really was reflecting on my own career. And there's a lot of things I've done really well, and there's a lot of things I've done really poorly. And one of the things that I noticed was the successes I had were always tied directly to my understanding that as a leader, I work for my team. Every time that I have empowered people, I have succeeded. And every time that I've taken people for granted and thought they were lucky to work for me because I was reading my own, newspaper clippings, if that's still a thing. And it was binary. I mean, it was linear. Like, you treat people good, you do well. You treat them like shit, you fail. And so I recognized that, and I was like, what is that about that? And the word acknowledgement came up for me a lot. Acknowledgement. How do we acknowledge each other in the industry? And so I wanted to create a platform around acknowledgement. So it started with like, who do I want to serve? And it was like, I want to serve like the line cook who's just the badass in the kitchen, who shows up and kills it every time. And you can count on them, and they just fly under the radar. If you've worked with them, you know that they're a monster. And if you haven't, you've never heard their name. And I wanted to give a name to them. Yes, acknowledgement, exactly that. I wanted people to know their name. And so we unsung hospitality heroes. That's what we call them. Hashtag unsung hospitality heroes is who these people are 100%. And so it's like, I want to talk to industry leaders and my contemporaries, and I want to have them tell me who I need to know, who somebody that has impacted their life, their career, that's in the trenches making it happen, that we need to know about. And so the audio podcast started with, I would interview somebody of some merit, whatever that means, but somebody that I knew, somebody I'd worked with, somebody that I collaborated with, somebody that I look up to. And we would do an episode, and they were about an hour long, about 45 minutes with that guest. One of the things that they had to do was acknowledge and tell us about somebody else. And every single one of our episodes of the 37 full audios that we did pre-COVID, and we'll get into that, was 2 people on every episode. A second voice contextualizing just 10 minutes, 15 minutes, like, who are they to you? What's the relationship? Because at the end of the day, the food doesn't matter. The drinks, they do not matter. The people are what matter. It's not what's on the plate. It's who gets it to the plate. Is something I've been talking about a lot. And so we had a second voice on. We got to talk to people who've never been invited to be on a podcast before. And they held the same space as somebody who's been on dozens and dozens and TV shows and this and that. And that was really important function of what we did, is that acknowledgement.
That's wild. I didn't notice that. I mean, I've listened and I've watched, and it's not something I have ever heard of anywhere. And it makes sense because I think you think back to the great athletes and the great coaches, and it's kind of comical because you can watch that person that makes the game-winning shot, and they get afterwards, they get all the accolades, and they're like, yeah, I backed up, I did this, and it's me. Or you can watch some of the big-time head coaches that come out and say they lose a game, and they go, hey, it's on me. I didn't lead us right. I gave us some wrong game plans. When they win, they're like, hey, quarterback did great, line did great. And it always amazes me when you watch certain athletes. You can tell the ones that are, that deflect they deflect the praise, and you tell the ones that are like, damn right it was me. I did it all. And that hurts. And that's something that I think a lot of times we fail to do, is acknowledge the right people. I've been in marketing since '99. I've had small businesses. I own another small business as well, a gym I'm partners in. And I've had my agency, my marketing firm, doing consulting since '08. And the one thing that literally, honestly, comes to my head occasionally, and it goes in my head when a client does it, when a client reaches out and says, hey, Matt, I want to let you know I appreciate what you guys do. And they send an email to my team, and we use Facebook Workplace to communicate with clients. You'll have clients go in there and praise some of my team, and it's awesome. But it also sticks out the number of people that have never acknowledged you. And It's like, wow. And it's, you think about, have you done it? That's a good thing with me. A buddy of mine told me I haven't done this much. I need to do it more. But Chris Patterson, who's a coach of mine and a friend, has always said, every day find a way to acknowledge. What does he say? Oh, I caught you. He's like, I want you to call your employees. I caught you. What? I caught you being awesome. Let me show you why, and tell them something they did right. He said that goes a long way.
It's funny you mentioned coach. I think about that a lot because I, chef and won the competitions and won the awards and, all of that kind of stuff. And I thought that that's what defined me. That's who I was. And now I'm in a very different position. And it's interesting. Even the Chef Jensen Cummings, sometimes I say, like, are you always a chef? Like you're always coach or to the people that you've been coached to? Or are you no longer a chef because you're not working 70 hours in a kitchen? I still don't know the answer to that. One of the things that I recognize is I do have so much bravado and ego. Like I'm a chef. Like I can't help it. It's part of what fuels me. It's my strength and my weakness. Yet I recognize now that I still want to go to the Hall of Fame. It's not going to be as a player. It might be as a coach. And so I think about that a lot. Like, what can I be to still bring massive amounts of influence and value to the humans working within the hospitality, food, and beverage industry, yet not be the one working in the hospitality and food and beverage industry in the way that I had, in the way that I had defined myself for 15 years of my career and the last 5 years, trying to find a new kind of path. And it was clumsy. Like I always haven't done that right. And this has felt so natural and real to me to be able to communicate with people. It's all hustle and communicate. And so probably when I mentioned the full episodes, like you can find Besser Podcast plug on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any of those, and you'll find the full episodes. That's where you find two people. What we've done more recently, and this was the pivot, right? Whatever that means. When restaurants were closing down, March, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, these tumultuous days where we're like, I don't know what's going to happen. I recognize that, look, what we talk about is like, tell me about your grandmother and cooking with her. Tell me about your first mentor. Tell me about that unsung hospitality hero. It didn't feel like the conversation that was timely, right? Everyone was so unbelievably unaware of what was going to happen. And so I was like, let's go. We're going to go live. I was like, I'm going to figure out how to go live. I have no idea how to do that. I figured out how to go on my phone and do the full podcast on Anchor and did that. I'm going to figure this out. And so I stumbled around some, we used Be Live at first, which is a streaming software. I just clumsily found that. Now we're on StreamYard like you are. We've leveled up and we can do cool stuff. And but we started like, just turn on the camera. I was like, just turn on the camera and talk to somebody. In the first episode, I talked to Eric Rivera, who's out in Seattle with Ado and doing, he is a lightning rod for sure, talking a lot about leadership within the industry. And he had been on the full podcast. I was like, hey man, I'm doing this live thing. You want to come talk to me for a while? He's like, sure. The lighting was horrible. I had hats on the wall behind me. It looked like I had Mickey Mouse ears, and it was just like so bad. But I was like, I don't care. We have not skipped a day, Matt, since March 18th. We have been on 7 days a week since March 18th. We have over 150 episodes. We have multiple collaborations, and we're hosting series for Fireside at 5 and doing chats, community type chat series. We're hosting a series for the Flatiron Food Film Festival, and Xander Katz is going to be on the show, who's like a legend to me in food fermentation. And I just said yes. I said go. Let's go. Let's hustle and communicate and figure the rest out later. And I don't know that we figured anything out, but we've not skipped a single day. And now I don't know. I was on vacation and I went live 7 days. We were on. It's what I want to do to support people because they're out there grinding. I better be out here hustling for them.
And you brought up something that I think is missed so much in the restaurant business, that the fact that this device, this phone, and a quick little tripod and a click of a button, that restaurant can tell their story like you've been telling the stories, and they don't do it. And that's just what crushes me the most. I deal with restaurants every day, and I know they're busy, and I'm like, me too. I'm busy. I've got employees. I've got companies. I've got accountants yelling at me. I do stupid crap that my employees are like, you can't really do that. And I'm like, okay. But I still find time every day to go live, sometimes between 5 to 25 times a day, and create content. And I think that talk about restaurants during COVID-19, the restaurants that I know that did well, I have some that did better. One guy was like, Matt, I don't know what to do when we come out of this thing, because I had no dining room for 3 months. and I was up 18%. And I'm thinking, man, I'm up 18%. I was 99% dine-in this time a year ago.
Yep.
I sure want to welcome my customers back into the restaurant in a couple months. But at the same time, part of me is like, holy crap, we have to clean. We have to do this. But the common element that I found among all the restaurants I worked with that did well, and even some of them that I didn't work with that I talked to that did well, was they used this device to storytell, to introduce, hey, like one of my clients actually got on there, and it was funny because he has another job that he does well in. He's not, the restaurant's not his full-time gig. And he's like, hey, it's me. You know who we are. We need your help. And I want to tell you a story. You coming in buying sandwiches, every time I had some number, like every time somebody spends $50, it pays for that person and that person. Because you know what? I don't get a paycheck. I have another job. I'm not going to take money from the business. I want to keep all of them employed because that keeps all their families happy. It keeps the community happy. And they did that. And he did these like every 2 or 3 days. And he's like, Matt, every time I do a video, sales go up. And the next day, sales are better. When I skip 2 or 3 days, don't do a video, sales aren't as impactful. And so talk about that, because you've obviously know how to tell stories, but you come from the restaurant side. What can we do? Let's say me and you, we tag team and we somehow force restaurants to start telling, chefs, put a camera on a tripod on the line and show some flames and show some fajita meat popping up in the air. What can we do to get them to do that more?
So it's all communication. Everything you're talking about is communication, communication, communication. What I've recognized as a chef is that food was the medium, but my mission was communication. 100%. I was communicating a personal experience, a flavor that changed my life, another human who made me a dish that changed my perception, a place that I traveled to. I wanted to communicate my experiences and my skill, and I used food as the medium for that. And so I think recognizing the game that we're actually in, we are communicators. We use food as our communication. I think that is an important part. What I think is interesting is restaurants, we are very quick to close the loop. We are instant gratification. All right. It's one of our strengths is our ability to only judge ourselves on the last plate, our ability to react and respond in the moment to every guest's needs, to anticipate the moment because we're in the moment. Yet it also means that we're great tacticians, but not good strategists. Yeah. We don't think forward. A lot of times can't see the forest through the trees, like all that kind of stuff comes to mind. And so I think thinking about the things that we're good at, that we're fundamentally built as individuals, as a team, as a restaurant, as an industry, and tripling down on those and changing the language, because this seems like a distraction from the experience that I'm trying to control, because a lot of times we're trying too hard to control that guest experience versus being the vessel, the vehicle for it. And so I think there's just a little bit of understanding of what game we're in. We're in the communication game. Absolutely. The phone is a distraction because people aren't paying attention. They're taking pictures of their phone on their phone. Well, they just shared your message to 5 people, 10 people, 2,000 people. And so when we think of grassroots marketing, word of mouth, we talk about word of mouth. No, I just make a great product and people will come. I just make a great product and have a great ambiance and have great service and people will come. You relied on that word of mouth. This is the new word of mouth. This is it.
Yeah.
Right. There was the adages that we talked about a lot in the industry. Somebody has a good experience, they tell 3 people. Somebody has a bad experience, they tell 10 people. It's the same exact thing amplified to the nth degree. So utilize the thing that you used to do of understanding guest experience and apply it just in a new medium. It's still the same game. It's just a different application. It used to be this, and now it's this. It's still communication. So I think that's one big thing. Understand what you're trying to accomplish, I think is huge. Now, I also want to talk about transactional. We have become way too transactional in this industry. We have used social media as a way to say, buy my shit. And the reality is you need to bring value to your audience. You need to interact with them. You need to have a conversation with them, just like you would if they were sitting at your bar. It's a conversation you're having. You would never sit there. We teach people upselling all the time. Yet upselling comes from a place of asking questions first, right? I mean, we know this of service. You ask questions, understand, what do you usually drink? And yes, they're trying to buy the $35 bottle of wine. You talk about the $70 bottle of wine so you can sell them the $42 bottle of wine. This is a pure tactic of sales, of simple tier selling, right? So you do these things, yet you ask them questions first. Social media is the questions, right? But we're trying to sell people all the time. We're skipping the first steps of what we already do in a restaurant. How do you sell? Those things are trained. The steps of service and hospitality are pretty well understood. I want to see restaurants apply that methodology and approach to social media, to marketing, to messaging, to brand, right? You don't go in for the sell until you've asked all the questions. Yet we don't ask any questions on here. We just go in for the sell. And then we wonder why we don't sell.
It's all one way. And I saw this, I've used this as an example many times in a restaurant that I'm pretty familiar with, that the owner was never active on social media, ever. Like, the restaurant was there and they had some good social media. It was always buy, 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 buy. They did some stuff in the community. They did some okay stuff, I'll say. Sure. But the owner was non-existent on social media. One thing I've always preached to people is, like, you've got an opportunity to reach people in a unique way. You owe it to your employees to be active on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn and YouTube. And out of nowhere, when COVID hit, this guy became the most active Facebook user. He made me look like I didn't know how to use Facebook from a standpoint that he used it a lot. But the problem was, every message was his handout. And it's like me, it's like the Johnny come lately. It's like, hey, bro, you didn't want to put your thoughts into the conversation of my timeline a month ago. Now that you really, really, really need me, it's convenient that you're calling me through Facebook. And it just cracks me up. But yeah, there's a lot of one-sided conversation. It's kind of interesting. You mentioned the topic you did. You can't see it, but on the other side of my computer, there's probably 70 restaurant books, of books that I've bought, that I read, that I try and grab stuff from. This is one I grabbed this morning, a guy named Jeff Benjamin, front of the house. And there's a section in here, ironically, that I read today. I actually posted on it about 3 hours ago on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, where he said, and I've heard this study, that out of New York, there was a study done of why a fine dining table turns went to crap. I don't know if you've seen this or not, I heard about it, but the table turns went bad. And he thought, was it my service? Was it this? Well, no, it was this phone. It was that when people used to sit down 15 years ago at a restaurant and you walked up and said, what do you want to drink? They had already looked at the menu. They were prepared. Now that you come to their table, what do you want to drink? And they're on their phone. I don't know, man. Let me look. And then it keeps going, that route to where every couple, every time the server stops by the table, the person still hasn't figured out appetizers or food. And so the table turns went from 45 to 50 minutes to an hour and 20 minutes. But it was, that was kind of comical you said that, because that was mentioned in there, how the phone has really changed the environment inside the restaurant.
So here's the thing. Let's break that down a little bit. I like that, because that's one of the ways that we're demonizing it. Well, the table turns are not as good because guests are on the phone. Yet we've always prided ourselves on the ability to navigate our guests through the experience, whatever that is, from a time standpoint, from the dishes that they have, from pairings, anything like that. Imagine if you spent all of your time talking to them through this, and that when they got to your restaurant, they already knew exactly what they wanted to order, because you have been talking to them. You have been showing them the new dish that's coming out, and the chef talked about the sourcing, and they met the farmer, and they know the name of the damn cow, and they say, wow, I am so in this story. I cannot wait to go. They tell all their friends that they're coming. They tag you on it. You respond and say, I can't wait to see you tonight, to have the dish we've been talking about for the last 3 weeks that you've been responding to. They walk into that restaurant. They don't have to look at a menu, right? Yeah. You have communicated everything that your little piece of paper used to communicate, that now this thing can communicate. It changes, yet it's still communication. We can now engage with our guests before they even walk in our 4 doors. Like, you have to think about the power that you now have, the access that you have. It used to be you could not interact with your guests until they called you. Yep. This is a funny thing. I do call like this. My sons will do call like this. They call you and say, I want to get a reservation. They go to Open Table, whatever that dynamic is. You could not interact with them till that point. And then they walked in the 4 doors, and you could not sell them a dish, a drink, until that point. Now you can sell them a dish now for 3 weeks from now. The power that you have now is exponential, yet we're demonizing the phone because our table turns are slow. No. Your reaction to media and communication is slow, and you're not taking the opportunity to sell by communicating. Don't sell transactionally. You should sell the dish through telling them the story of that dish 3 weeks before they walk in the door, because you're now making sure that they walk through your door, because somebody else is. And if it's not you, somebody else is telling them the name of that cow, and they care about the name of that cow, and they're going to the place that told them the name of the cow.
Yeah. And it comes down to using it too. It's a problem in the business. I look back, I got in marketing in 1999, and I remember, radio and TV and email. I was in radio. TV was big, and direct mail and billboards. Email was this very small thing that was rarely used. The internet was in its infancy. I think it was a few years after Al Gore created it. Of course, you might be too young to remember that joke.
I remember.
Yeah, and so there was not a whole lot of stuff that a business can do. And when I started writing my first book about 6 years ago, I never published it because the author said the publisher didn't like the angle. We ended up changing it to my other book, Don't 86 Your Restaurant Sales. But the first chapter in this book is called Create Your Own Radio Station. And where I came with that idea was that 1999, when I was selling radio, businesses didn't have the ability to reach out to people how they do now.
Nope.
Whereas nowadays, if you're a restaurateur, you can create your own radio station. You've got a Facebook page, you got YouTube, you got Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, LinkedIn, email, text, messenger, chat rooms, discussion boards. And you can literally, in a matter of minutes, reach thousands of people. And it's not hard. And like I was talking to on my podcast, MPTV, this was, I guess, the second episode, early April, a guy named Yanni, who owns King Euros up in Columbus, Ohio. I use him as an example all the time because he's an old school chef. He runs a Greek restaurant. The food is off the hook. I mean, this Euro was like the size of it was like 5 Chipotle burritos in one, like literally the size of my head. And one thing I asked him, I said, dude, I got to ask, who's doing all of your social media posts? Because there's days that I'll just watch stories to see what you post because there's 50, 60, 100 stories a day. I'm like, who's doing it? And he's like, what do you mean, who? I go, who? He's like, me. And he's not a young guy. He's not old, but if I had to guess, he's probably in his early to mid 50s, maybe late 40s. And he's on Facebook and Instagram stories all the time. And they're not generic. I mean, they're funny, they're cool, they're not selling, telling a story, they're colorful, they're boomerangs, they're funny little I mean, they're all sorts of stuff. And he said, Matt, I look at it this way. These mediums have given me a free opportunity to talk to people. And so if I put a story out one time a day and 40 people see it and 3 of them go, you know what? I'm going to go have lunch there. Well, I looked at that. He was telling me, I looked at that early on and thought, well, what if I did 100 stories? And 40 people saw 100 stories, and there's
play the math. Yeah.
Because the next thing I know, well, this guy was up in sales. Take catering out of the business because he lost catering. He was a huge catering company. You take catering out, his sales were up at a little tiny mom and pop Greek restaurant. Yep. And it was because of storytelling. And he also always highlighted his employees. He's got one of his managers who has beat drug addiction. And is a great person, and he's highlighted her and his journey with her, how she came when she was a kid and how he saw her in her teenage years in college and then after college fail in life and then rebound. He tells those stories and it's awesome, but it pains me because so many businesses don't use it. And I hear all the time, Matt, I'm too busy. I'm like, bro, you think I'm not busy? Like I've been on this video call and I bet I've gotten 100 text, emails, and messages that 20 or 30 need to be responded to pretty soon, but I still find time to do things that are going to help me out.
I'm with you.
Here's what Albert says, the power and direct access. I wish more restaurant owners would use their phone to converse with their customers. I'll tell you the one that this brings me up. Thanks for putting that on here, Albert. Which, by the way, don't you love StreamYard? I think this is probably the best product I've seen for broadcasting like we're doing here. I've used them all.
We're big fans for sure.
Yeah, it's so easy to use. But one thing that I've talked about, and we're actually in the process of trying to figure out how to help clients with this on the side. It's not what we do, but it's needed, is reviews. is reviews. Typically, the only time people pay attention to them is when it's bad. And I was telling a guy the other day, I said, I want you to envision reviews like this. Me and Jensen are walking down the hall. Jensen walks by me, and Jensen says to Matt, I love the new orange shirt you got. And I just keep walking. You're going to be like, what a jackass. Like,
yeah, not complimenting that guy ever again.
Yeah. That's what I find with reviews and with comments. Like we have a team. Part of my company is we have, I think it's 4 women, I want to say 4 or 5 of them, that they respond to every Facebook and Instagram comment, period. And they be specific. Somebody says, oh my gosh, your chocolate chip cookies are amazing. They'll find a GIF of a chocolate chip cookie dancing and they say something. And we spend money on it because I think it's important to continue the conversation. But reviews, how many people say something positive about your business and you spend an hour agonizing over the one jerk that said something really bad and you type out this long response, but you ignore the 100 people that said how awesome you are?
Look, it's mindset, Matt, all the time. We are in a scarcity mindset by default in the restaurant hospitality industry. We need to shift to abundance mindset. I'm 100% buyer in that. And you mentioned, I don't have enough time because we're in survival mode, because there's always not enough, because the guy next, we're not in competition, we're in co-opetition so often, but we just are so scared, honestly. And I've been there where it's like, I don't know where the next guest is going to come from. Yeah. Like, I don't know where the next buck is going to come from. I don't know where the cook is going to come from because 3 people didn't show up in the last 3 weeks and I'm down 5 people. Like, I get it. I've been there so many times, yet shifting the mindset when you're in it is so difficult. It's why I'm always pushing so much positivity into the ecosystem and acknowledging people. We started a Facebook group called Best Served Together, and we're just posting like pictures of humans. Like, here's a person that I appreciate. Thank you for doing what you do. And it's really difficult. There's like 1,000 people in there. And honestly, like, I'm always being like, guys, post something about somebody else. Please, please, please. Like, post something. Show me a picture of your dishwasher. Like, I want to meet them. And then one of the reasons we've been on every day, Matt, is because 95% of the people that are on our show have been acknowledged and recommended by somebody else. So when I tell people, like, introduce me to somebody, I'll have them on the show. And then we have Amber Bigsby, who's the lunch lady extraordinaire at the Bigsby School. Amber Graff, excuse me. She's at the Bigsby School in Boulder, Colorado, who like would never have gotten invited. She works at a school in Boulder, but she was on because somebody said she's amazing. And I said, let's get her on the show. So we hold space for, Ming Tsai and Edward Lee and Farmer Lee Jones. Like, these people are on our show. And then we also have Matthew Mack and Tajai Cook and Zuri Resendez and Amber Graff on the show because I think they matter just as much, but is their message as important? Yes. Is it as media friendly and savvy? Maybe not, but that's our job, is to put their story on a pedestal. And I think it's super important. And I just want to touch on this. You said something that I thought was really interesting about the way that we're thinking about reviews. I want to get granular and tactical for people. You just have to think about social media like you think about your 4 walls. If you shift the location expectation of social media, because it's out there, it's not in here, and we're in here. Yet, to your point, if a guest says to you anything, I love your chocolate chip cookies, and you're their server, you're their bartender, you would not acknowledge them. You would acknowledge they just spoke to you because they're in your restaurant and you're in the hospitality industry. They just told you, this is a little bit cold, could you send it back? They just told you, I love this Riesling. They just told you a piece of information that is so valuable. They're doing the same thing. You just aren't considering it as important because it's not within your 4 walls. The reality is social media is within your 4 walls. You have to shift the paradigm of your expectation of where you are communicating with your guests. It's not only butts and seats anymore. They're everywhere. So the fact that you would communicate and tell a table about tonight's specials is communication. To tell them about a winemaker that you're excited about and you love their Riesling because the guest just ordered a glass of Riesling and you got them into a bottle, it's the communication that led to the sale, right? We need to do that in social media. They are in your 4 walls. Just go there. Social media is not even on your phone. It's in your 4 walls. Whatever it takes for you to recognize and acknowledge that and then deploy against that, that's what you need to do.
I got it. I got the saying. You ready? You don't have 4 walls, you have 3. One of them's open so that you can get out on the World Wide Web. Because
your outdoor dining, which everybody's hot on right now, includes the entire world.
Yeah. And that's you're right, because if you think about it, I love that analogy. If you think about it, like we have a client I was just looking at their Facebook page yesterday, and one of their posts from last week has had like 300 comments on it. And our team goes through and replies back, like I was mentioning. If you think about those 300 people, if you were walking through your restaurant, you're exactly right. If you're the manager of a restaurant and you're walking down the aisle and the guy said, "Hey, Matt, chocolate chip cookies great," or "Hey, Matt, I love the pepperoni pizza you guys are doing now," you wouldn't just go and keep walking. You would stop, have a conversation, build a relationship, find out why they like it, find out about their kids. And I think that is so skipped. Like, you're exactly right. Like, social media needs to come in the 4 walls, or we need to break down the wall and realize that you got to go outside your 4 walls to have those conversations. So I want to give you 2 suggestions of people you should talk to that I think you would like.
Bring it on.
So number 1's a guy named Bob Jacoby. He's the general manager of Quaker Steak and Lube in Florence, Kentucky. He's been on my podcast. He's been in the restaurant business forever. I call him the king of table touches. He talks to everybody. He praises a lot of people, but he is involved in his restaurant. He's rarely on the line cooking food. He's out there talking to the guests and making sure their food's right and making sure the service is right. He told me in my podcast that many times he'll beat the server to the bar to grab her drink she just reordered so he can take them to the table so that has an excuse. He said, because sometimes it's awkward to walk up to a table where you don't know the people and you want to find a unique way to say something. Well, heck, if you take them their drinks, here's your drinks with a Coke and the Sprite. Hey, what's your all's names? You've been here before. Boom. I think you'd love him from an acknowledgement standpoint. He's great.
I want to touch on that. Again, it's mindset stuff. Like, I'm trying to trick people into doing what's right for them and for their employees and for their team, for the industry, all of it. Like table touches, right? Touch every table. We've been told that through our entire careers. Touch every table, and touch every table. It just happens that your table is every table in everybody's own living room, dining room. You need to touch every table. So take that mentality of what you've been instilled in you. Touch every table. You just have to recognize that you have more than 36 tables now. You have 2,784 potential tables. Go get those tables.
Talk about table touch. I'm going to give you something that's going to make you cringe. Today, I spent, let's see, it's 3:40. I spent 7:45 to 11:45 at the same coffee shop. There's 7, 8 tables.
They never talk to you?
I got my coffee. I sat there. I have headphones on. And here's the worst part, is the owner was there the entire time. Mm-mm. The one guy who gave me my coffee, nobody ever acknowledged. And I was cracking up because that's what I do. But I'm sitting there, and I had a friend of mine who is a personal trainer, apparently has the space next to the coffee shop now. I didn't know this. Shout out to Mark Pease, if you're out there. And Mark saw me, saw my car, and he knew it was me because it's orange. And he came in. He's like, "Man, is that yours? Yeah, cool. Hey, love it. I'll be by later." And so, like, he acknowledged me. 2 other friends that came in acknowledged me, had conversations. And I'm cracking up that when you just said that, and I had thought of this earlier, I was there from 7:45 to 11:45. I'm in an orange shirt, orange shoes. I've been there many other times. One time did anybody ever walk over and say, "Matt, how's the coffee? How come you didn't get a cookie? How's life? What book you reading? What do you got going on?" And I'm like, and I just was dying.
Would you have more money? Let's get super practical. Would you have, if somebody came up to you and said, "Matt, like, I know you usually get a cookie with your coffee. You weren't feeling the cookie today? Oh, you know what? I didn't even think about it. Let me go buy that cookie." Is that a likely scenario?
Oh, it's very likely. The other aspect of it is, this is the 3rd time I've gotten this blend of coffee. I think they call it Highlander Grog. It's great. If they would walk over and say, "Hey, I noticed you got Highlander Grog 3 times this past week." Yeah, we sell it. You want a pound of it to take home? We can grind it for you. What do you do? Pour over or drip? I mean, it's an opportunity to increase sales. And you're right, because it was kind of comical. You mentioned that was about 11 o'clock, because I had lunch at 12:15. About 11 o'clock, they were cooking something back there. that smelled absolutely amazing. And I was tempted to walk up and ask because it got me hungry, but I'm like, no, Matt, stay focused. We got lunch in an hour and 15. We're going to have lunch with Dr. Phil, a buddy of mine. There's a chiropractor for my BNI chapter. I'm gonna stay focused. But if somebody would have walked up to me with whatever, it was some type of cookie, I'm sure. If they would have walked out and said, hey, we just made some of these. This is a half I cut out for a sample. Try it. I would have walked up and bought a dozen of them probably and eaten every one of them and then went to lunch feeling like crap.
You would have brought one to Dr. Phil. I know you.
You're right. I would eat 11. I would have taken one.
And then that's a huge point. You would have felt more acknowledged, which gives you more loyalty. I know I focus more on brand equity than loyalty, but there's a little bit more brand loyalty that's potentially built in that interaction. And then you become a brand ambassador. You are a marketing tool for them as a human being because now Dr. Phil got a cookie as well. It checks all the boxes. All they needed to do was have one little interaction with you, and it changes everything.
Yeah. And then here's the second person I want you to talk to. I'll make an email introduction to both of them. Let me share my screen because this is a guy that does a lot of acknowledgement, and I think that you would really like it. So this is Yanni, who owns King Euros, and this is his manager. Her first name is it Stephanie? No, I didn't have it on here. But this is her, and he highlights her all the time. This is his birthday, highlighting an employee. He's always talking about people. There's employees, and I think it's Stephanie. Stephanie got him happy birthday. I think you would love talking to him because he literally typifies. Here's this post. Yeah, Stephanie, there it is. Talking about her journey of changing her life, and she's been with him for a long time as far as an employee. So I think it'd be a cool episode to have him as well.
You make the intro, Sophie will get them booked. It's done. It's already written. The only question is what day. It's done.
Cool. Well, as Albert said, another fire session. I appreciate your time.
I appreciate you having me on. It's great to be able to talk with anybody and everybody who's willing to listen and acknowledge. I would ask anybody listening, watching this, find somebody to acknowledge. Acknowledge them to them. Post a story, a picture, a video, anything about that person. It can change somebody's day, which can change trajectory, which can change everything. I really believe it.
And so if you want to find more about the podcast, go to facebook.com, Best Served Podcast, or you can just go to the World Wide Web and go to bestservedpodcast.com. Thank you for your time today. I will send you emails with those introductions. I can't wait to see them on. Appreciate all you're doing.
Matt, take care.
Thank you.